Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. As the world watches what is happening in Afghanistan with bated breath, the last pocket of Afghan Taliban resistance, which is the Panjshir Valley, we've seen that there are conflicting reports as far as what's happening there, with the Taliban claiming that they're victorious, but of course the National Resistance Front claims the opposite. What's the actual situation, of course, will be known in a few days, but of course Pakistan is committed to ensuring that there is peace in Afghanistan, making all the efforts that we can, and of course wants the world to do what they can to mitigate the threat of ISIS within the region and in the world. As far as, let's see in the next couple of, whether Taliban can establish their government will be evident, of course, in the next 2 days, and what happens as far as Afghanistan, as far as their government is concerned, the formation of that government is concerned. We'll be talking about all of that today. I have with me Imran Jan, who's a columnist. Thank you for joining us today. Dr. Nazir Mahmood, who's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you for being with us. We also have Asif Durrani, who is a former ambassador. Thank you for being with us. Imran Sahab, like I said, it is of course the last pocket of resistance against the Taliban, which is the Panjshir Valley, and we've seen, what's there are. How do you see the situation? Do you think it will take, with all evidence to the fact that it will probably not be very long before we see them becoming victorious there also?
Well, it's just a matter of time and not much time. They may already have been defeated. Of course, Amrullah Saleh, who now proclaims to be the acting president of Afghanistan, has come up with a short video that he tweeted about. He sent it to BBC also that he's very much there in the country in Panjshir, and that the fact that they're not defeated right now, that may be false. Even if it's not false, and they're yet to be defeated, the Taliban, they defeated the mighty United States Army. So defeating a bunch of ragtag militia who may not really believe in the cause that much would not be a big challenge. They definitely will be defeated in a short time. The real threat that the Taliban are going to face is, as you mentioned in your introduction, of course, getting the economy up and running, jump-starting everything in the country, And also, it's just a little hypocritical of the Western society to be expecting the Taliban to do everything so fast, give women rights, start the country, have a government, announce who's in charge and who the president is and who the supreme leader is, all of that, and have a cabinet and whatever else that's required. Getting all of that done in such a short time is just too much to expect from anyone, regardless, Taliban or any other country will not be able to do that in such a short span of time.
And of course, this is a war-torn land since a long time now, and there is, a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of things that need to be done, and of course, they will be needing a lot of support.
Absolutely. And the $10 billion or close to $10 billion reserves of Afghanistan, the U.S. has blocked access to that. The Taliban cannot access that. So on one side you are saying, well, go ahead and do a good job, and if you do a good job, we might even recognize you as a legitimate government. And then you block all the money. How do you expect them to behave as a natural, organic government when you do all of these things in the background and have the opposite rhetoric publicly?
Okay,
doesn't make sense.
Let me come back to you. Dr. Nazir, do you agree? You think in terms of, of course, as far as the Panjshir Valley is concerned, we can say that it might be a matter of time, but what about even, recognition of Taliban is concerned? Do you think that's also just a matter of time now?
I don't think so, that recognition is just a matter of time. Just today, European Union leaders, they have said that they are ready to engage with the Taliban, and they have made it clear that it doesn't mean engagement with Taliban does not mean that we are going to immediately recognize the Taliban as legitimate government. UK has also said the same thing, that we are not recognizing, and we don't expect European Union and America also to recognize the Taliban. So I don't think that an immediate recognition of the Taliban government is on the cards. It will take some time. And the European Union has put forward 5 very clear conditions today. And top of them are that the Taliban government will not be trying to export terrorism, because essentially that was a charge against them 20 years back.
Which
that
they've
they were-
also said now,
They have said this.
Of course, yeah.
Yes. So
They've made some very politically correct statements. There's no denying that, right?
yes. So they have. European Union has put it out in black and white. That's what they expect Taliban to do. They expect them not to export terrorism. Number two, respect human rights. And the third most important point is the stable and inclusive government.
government.
So they want the Taliban to include, let's say, Abdullah or Hamid Karzai, but it is yet to be seen, even if they include Hamid Karzai or Abdullah, how they will be operating under the Taliban. For all practical purposes, Afghanistan, almost 100% of Afghanistan is under the Taliban control. So even if they include Hamid Karzai or Abdullah, I don't think that they will have much power or authority. All major decisions will be taken by the Taliban government. But the Taliban leadership at the moment is, I think, also proceeding cautiously. They have not announced, as Imran Saab also said, that we can't expect, nobody can expect, it is almost a revolution. And whenever such a revolutionary situation comes up, just like in Iran, 42 years back when Imam Khomeini took over, we remember that, there were too many changes in the beginning. Bani Sadr became, there was Bani Sadr, Mahdi Bazargan. Too many people came and went before finally it was decided that the power will be finally in the hands of Imam Khomeini. So it is yet to be seen how things unfold. Panjshir Valley is about to fall, and I think it is just a matter of a day or two.
So within, I mean, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Asif Durrani Sahab. Durrani Sahab, in terms of how, inclusive the government is, of course, we'll know, very shortly in a couple of days, and how the formation of the government itself will sort of, indicate what the intentions of the Taliban are, how they intend for things to go on from here. And of course, isn't it true that their hands must be tied in the sense that they need to have those kind of resources to run the government? Because at this time, things are not, I mean, their things are clearly in shambles.
Taliban are more cautious. Secondly, they are more compromising. They are more accommodative. So that is why they are taking time in forming the cabinet. Otherwise, they would have gone straight away to form their government. And since 15th of August that they have captured Kabul, and now it is almost 17 days, they are negotiating with other stakeholders in Afghanistan, which are non-Taliban. And that also shows that Taliban have learned the lesson during the past 20 years. So I think as the date has been advanced for the formation of the cabinet, itself shows that negotiations are not complete, and you have to give time to the new dispensation to come up with a viable option.
In your opinion, what kind of a government do you see coming into form? However much time it may take for the time.
Well, it is difficult to predict because I'm not privy to the negotiations which are taking place.
In your opinion, of course.
Well, even if I offer my opinion, it won't have the value if, say, they include, when they talk about the inclusiveness, there could be two options. One is those who have been opposed to the Taliban and they include them, that would be the inclusiveness. But the other aspect of the inclusiveness could be that those who have already joined the Taliban, whether they are Tajiks, Uzbeks, Turkmens or Hazaras, which is the case. For instance, in Devkundi, they have appointed a Hazara governor who was part of the Taliban movement. So so that's why I'm reluctant to offer my views on that context with regard to inclusiveness is concerned. And then also, where the Taliban are also mindful of the international opinion about their movement and how they move about it. And I think this time they are more concerned about the international opinion. Yes.
Okay. Let me come back to you on that note. Imran Sahab, do you agree? You think that they're more concerned about, how they look internationally, the way that they're perceived, all over the world, because of course of that dependency factor also that I was earlier talking about. they have to give an image at this time. They have, like I said, said a lot of the right things. Whether they're actually going to go forward and do them, of course, we don't know yet.
Of course, Taliban, the statements that we have seen emanating from this Taliban right now, as opposed to the ones 20 years ago, they are in line with what the Western society would like to hear. For example, respect for women's rights, and the one thing that they said, that we will not seek any retribution against people that we were fighting against, for example, the Indians or the remnants of Northern Alliance. But I'll come back to that part also, because there's something interesting that the Western society also doesn't like to, actually likes to ignore. So yes, I mean, to answer your question, Taliban, of course, are saying, as you mentioned, the politically correct things. They want the recognition. Every insurgent group, when they take over a country, they always, one of the things that they always yearn for is recognition. They definitely want that. They want foreign investment, even from India, United States, United Kingdom, other countries, because they transitioned from an insurgent group to a government now. So they have a country to run now, and it's a gigantic task. They'll find out it's not easy. But I do want to explain one thing. I was reading the New York Times and Washington Post, and there's all this rhetoric about will the Taliban seek revenge against the people that they were fighting against or not? Will there be retribution or not? Listen, this is interesting. If you look back at the Nuremberg trials, that made the foundation of the Western legal code, for the decades to come. That entire trial, those entire trials were based on revenge. The people, whatever the Allied forces did was fine, and whatever the Nazis did, they punished those people, using legal terms, of course, legal procedures. So to say that they should not be doing that is just really hypocritical. I'm not advocating that they should go ahead and punish people. They're not right now doing that. They even let all of it.
So what do you mean when you say that it is wrong for the West to say that there should be retribution?
No, the West
is saying, shouldn't be.
Yeah, the West is saying that there should not be any retribution by the Taliban. But the reason that's hypocritical is because the West cherishes the Nuremberg trials as the foundation of their legal code, and that itself was nothing but revenge trials. All the Nazis were punished. So that part somehow always gets ignored.
Fair enough. Dr. Nazir, do you agree? You think that there will be, you think that as far as, they're going to be able to do all the things that Taliban are saying that they will do, ultimately when they form government, when they decide to run things, because like I said, their hands will be tied to some extent. There's no denying that.
To a great extent, their hands are tied. Number one, they do need recognition. What for? Recognition for money. 75% of Afghanistan's budget came from foreign aid. Only 20% was contributed by Afghanistan itself. And now that 75% aid, which mostly came from Western countries, European Union, America and others, that is not coming. So the main question will be, if they don't get the recognition, without recognition they won't get the money. Maybe they will get some humanitarian aid from UN. That may come. But that will be distributed immediately, and that is minimal, just for people to avoid food insecurity, so that people don't die of hunger. So that may come. But to run the government, taking over capital or taking over the whole country is easy, but to run the whole country, and the country of almost 40 million people, they need money. So where will that come from? Some people say that, well, we have, they will have Russia, they will have China, they will have Pakistan, they will have Iran. These are the four countries as opposed to the Western countries. Now, Russia, I don't think that Russia will be interested in paying any money to Afghanistan. They may recognize and continue their diplomatic operations, but I don't think that they are interested in paying. What for? China helps Pakistan, but China is more interested in infrastructure projects. China does not give cash even to Pakistan. When Pakistan is in need, Pakistan has to go to IMF, still, to go to Saudi Arabia. So if China cannot give cash money to even Pakistan, how can Taliban expect that China will come and start throwing billions of dollars? That won't happen. So the problem...
So you're saying that ultimately they will have to go to the West. And so
ultimately, because unless China, the only power which has money, the largest foreign exchange reserve, that is China. if China decides to give that much money, which
you don't think will
European
happen.
Union or America was giving, if China, and I doubt, and I gave you example that if we claim that Pakistan has the best relationship, if we can't get cash, how can Taliban expect? China will be interested only in expanding the Belt and Road Initiative and constructing more infrastructure projects. That is, I don't think that China will be giving money. So ultimately, Taliban will have to go to either IMF, World Bank, European Union, America, Saudi Arabia, even UAE. These are the countries that can give.
Accept the conditions. So how do you see them accepting, like Imran Sahab was saying, the conditions that now we've seen, at least 4 of them that have been laid down?
They can. It will not be easy for Taliban themselves also, because there may be some internecine differences within themselves. Though they are saying that we will respect women's rights, we will present a moderate face, but the problem is that within those, because whether it is Mullah Habatullah or Mullah Brother or all these are essentially believers in a theocratic government. And when a certain type of theocratic government is not established, there may be some other groups who would say that why did we fight? We fought to establish Sharia. So if they are giving rights to women, there may be some groups who would say, no, this is not allowed. So there is a possibility that there may be some internecine anew wars, conflicts between them. And that will be, again, if that happens, that will be another disaster in the making. And it has also, Taliban takeover in Afghanistan has also, because essentially Taliban were and are extremist group, unless they show their moderate face. So their taking over may enhance extremism in other parts also. So that is the downside of it. Though in Pakistan, most of the people are happy or appear to be happy that it is good that Taliban are there, and then there will be no incursion of India from Afghanistan side. That is the positive side. But the negative side which I see of Taliban takeover, that within Pakistan within Pakistan we have extremist forces.
So
there are people. They will be emboldened. They will be encouraged that if you can take over Kabul, then another militant group can take over here also.
Fair enough. Let me go to Asif Sabji. Durrani Sahab, do you agree? You think that is something that we need to watch out for? The fact that extremist forces within Pakistan may be, to quote Dr. Nazir, be emboldened, so to speak.
Well, you can stretch your imagination, anything may happen. And in Pakistan, the largest challenge would be how to implement the rule of law. We have been lacking in implementing the rule of law. That's why organizations like TTP could pop up. So this is what the government has to take, the action, and then neutralize those forces. So whatever is happening in Afghanistan perhaps may be suitable to Afghanistan because of its ultra-orthodox conservative society. But that may not be true about Pakistan. And Pakistanis may resist any threat to their way of life. But you never know, because these people who think that they can hold the people to ransom, like we have been seeing some of the religious organizations, they have been blocking the roads during their demonstrations. So it is possible. So in that case, then the role of the state would be very crucial, and it has to intervene and implement the rule of law. Yes.
Right. Let me come back to you. Right. Imran Sahab, you think that as far as Pakistan is concerned, of course, our role, even at this time, the role that we've played since, Taliban have managed to, have managed to take over Kabul, and we've seen the fighting has been very exemplary. And of course, we've also said that, we just want an inclusive government as far as Taliban is concerned. We also want there to be peace and prosperity in the region, which is our prime concern. Do you think that in that kind of scenario, of course, and then like Dr. Nazir is saying, there's no denying that there is a certain, do you see people being sympathizing with Taliban in Pakistan at this time?
I respectfully disagree, and I'll give you my reason for that. The Taliban of Afghanistan have been an naturally born organic group and their DNA was nationalistic. They are, of course, Muslim, they're Pashtun, but they were not like the Arab jihadists who wanted to die, have martyrdom, end up in heaven. Their DNA is primarily nationalistic. They said, leave our land, get the hell out, leave our country. That was the main goal, and that is the main goal. Now, the TTP in Pakistan, the Taliban of Pakistan, those were not some organic people. They were sponsored from abroad, we all know that. So, in the absence of that support from abroad, they'll die. If you choke them off, if there's no oxygen coming for them, they will die naturally, because that group was not natural.
What about the threat of ISIS? We've seen that.
That is very much there in Afghanistan, of course, and the Taliban, that's one of the threats they will be facing. That's also
a threat that the world, of course, and Pakistan also.
For Pakistan, for India also, because the Khorasan province that they have in their plan includes parts of northern India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. So, of course, that's a threat for Taliban, for Pakistan, for India also, but there are also things people say, and I believe them, that those are probably Indian shock troops trying to fight against the Taliban. They're just the extremist reincarnation of the Northern Alliance, because those are the same people, they just shifted to the other side. And I don't think in future they'll be able to hold out, because again, the Takfiri ISIS fighters believe in dying. They fight to die. Taliban fight to live. There's a difference there. A lot of people miss, or just don't get the nuance in that. But to answer your question again, Pakistan will have threats. Pakistan will have problems. Peshawar primarily will see the heat coming from Afghanistan in the days ahead. I hope it doesn't happen, but it has always happened, and it probably will happen again. But it's not a threat that cannot be eliminated, is what I'm saying. And again, it was not some natural threat. It was not a natural group. Yes, Pakistan is home to the largest Shia population, and ISIS will have second largest actually. After Iran, Pakistan is home to the second largest Shia population, and ISIS will have their eyes set on that, because remember, ISIS primarily wants to fight and kill the Shia people. That's how they were formed. That's their DNA. So,
right, let me just come back to you. Dr. Nazir, what about the role of the U.S. now? Because we've seen, some reports, we've seen sort of, mixed statements coming from the U.S. also after the attack that, on their troops, and after, 12 people were killed. How do you see their role? Do you think that, they'll be watching? Do you think that, of course, they're increasing intelligence? That's also been talked about, the fact that they will have that kind of role, their diplomatic role. All of these words have been used as far as the U.S. is concerned. How do you see it?
This is very intriguing. It is not yet clear, because it appears that Joe Biden has presented Afghanistan in a platter to Taliban and to China.
Right.
Now, maybe there are some people who think that there may be something behind it, but I don't see anything behind it, because when America was controlling Afghanistan, when Ashraf Ghani government was there, what could America achieve in 20 years? If they could not achieve with that many soldiers, that many weapons, what could they achieve now once they have pulled out? So it is yet to be seen, because apparently I don't see any immediate future role of America in this region. Probably they have voluntarily withdrawn, and if they have withdrawn, they have this field is open for China to come in to fill the void. So I don't think that America will be able to play any major role. It might be having some minor role, giving some aid or things like that, because Afghanistan is surrounded by powers which are not America friendly anymore. Iran, Russia, China, and even Pakistan is not as friendly to America as it used to be.
But if the West controls the purse strings, so to speak, as far as the Taliban are concerned, don't you think they will then have a considerable say or leeway in terms of what happens?
Well, that is what is troubling. Why troubling? Because in that sense, if they control the purse, and they do. There are examples of other countries like China, like Iran, like Cuba. So there have been examples in which Western powers imposed sanctions on a particular regime, and that particular regime survived. but that survival is at the cost of the people of that country. Underdevelopment, Iran, though they have been ruling for 42 years, but Iran has been under constant pressure, economic pressure. People have suffered poverty, and Iran had oil. Afghanistan does not even have that. So my fear is that if that purse strings are not loosened and they control it, so there will be more poverty, and if there is more poverty, there is more underdevelopment resulting in more violence, more miseries. So that's what I fear, and that will have its
own repercussions.
Its fallout on Pakistan also. That's what I fear.
Right. Durrani Sahab, do you agree? You think that, unless the world, whatever has happened or transpired as far as Afghanistan is concerned, unless the world gives it a chance now by giving them some resources, there are chances that it can all, have a fallback effect, also for Pakistan, but also for other countries. And if we're talking about a very real threat of ISIS there. We're talking, about a country that's war-torn, the people, there's poverty. So all of that, for there to be the kind of prosperity that we would like, the world keeps talking about, they would have to give it that kind of assistance, that kind of chance that it needs. And for that, of course, the West will need to play its role that we're talking about. For them to just say it and then withdraw all kind of assistance, it doesn't give it any real chance, right?
Well, I think, yes, you have made a case, and let me say that America is neighbor to all the countries in the world, wherever the crisis is. So America is not leaving anytime soon. They will be very much there. That is why that they have shifted their embassy from Kabul to Doha, and they are in touch with the Taliban in Doha. And secondly, they would observe and watch how the Taliban bring peace and stability in the country, and which is why I think they are going to involve themselves. Secondly and thirdly, President Biden has said that they will they may not recognize it instantly, but they will be in fact involved for the humanitarian assistance which is forthcoming. Fourthly, European Union and many of their important ministers, they have been visiting Pakistan. They are in touch with the Taliban in Doha, and they will also extend their humanitarian assistance. And lastly, which is very important, don't underestimate Afghanistan's own potential vis-a-vis rare earth materials, which, according to conservative estimates, is worth $1 trillion, but the liberal estimates say it is close to $3 trillion. Now, when 20 years ago, when Taliban were here, this discovery was not very much there. But now it is the new, you can say, mineral and the resource, which would be utilized by the world, especially with regard to electric cars, and batteries are being used for that matter. And that rare earth material is available in Afghanistan, which is close to 35 to 40% of the total world production. So here, Afghanistan has got quite an attraction for the world, and they would not miss this opportunity, because after Saudi Arabia, this is going to be the most precious natural resource which should be available. So here, I think not all is so bad, or not all is lost. And I think all would depend that how Taliban, through their political maturity, they want to bring peace, and then they bring in inclusiveness in their future political dispensation. And thirdly, how they behave with the region, with the neighbors, and abroad. Yes.
Okay. Let me come back to you. Imran Sahab, do you agree? You think that there are, in terms of natural resources, like Durrani Sahab is saying, that it has, they have enough natural resources to exploit them. But even for exploiting them, I mean, to say that America will get involved or the world will get involved, unless it gives more than humanitarian assistance, isn't it too simplistic to assume that they will have any real chance?
I mean, the talk about the resources has been going on, and I believe it's real, because it has been mentioned in some of the really reputable publications also. But the reason United States will continue to engage with the Taliban, including giving them money, even without recognition. This is important to understand, because remember, United States as a superpower has the privilege to label things as they like. For example, there was a coup in Egypt in 2013. Mohammed Morsi was replaced by Sisi, General Sisi. Now, there's a law in the United States that says you cannot give aid money to a country that has a military coup happening. But they still went ahead and gave that money to Egypt, General Sisi's government, and just said that, well, it wasn't really a coup. They just removed that label, that wording from it. Now, they may not recognize the Taliban. They may say, well, we're not recognizing it, but we have to. And today in the New York Times, there was an article published. It talks exactly about that the United States wants to find a way to give money and food and whatever is needed to the people of Afghanistan, bypassing the Taliban. Of course, that's ludicrous. You cannot bypass the Taliban. They now own that country. They are the rulers now. They're the movers and shakers of that country. So
however they may label it, when they say that they will not recognize the Taliban, you're saying that if, short of recognizing them in terms of involving themselves, in terms of helping, giving them humanitarian assistance, they may call it whatever. But you're saying under the guise of any label, they can then do the same.
Absolutely. Because here's the thing. There's official recognition and there's de facto recognition. The United States made the peace deal with the Taliban. The United States, in the last days of withdrawal, made a deal and understanding with the Taliban that their forces should not be attacked, and actually they should help evacuate the Americans. That's de facto recognition right there. Why did you make the deal with the Taliban? Just so you can say that we don't negotiate for the terrorists? Of course, you just did exactly that. So they're not officially calling it for recognition.
Yeah, so it's about how official or what the label is, whether they recognize it. What about the rest of the world? Dr. Nazir, do you think that they will follow suit? Or the world will, of course, wait for what happens as far as the West is concerned? How do you see the other countries in terms of China, Iran, Russia? Will they recognize Taliban? Are they going to wait for what happens and just watch, whatever is happening internally as far as Afghanistan is concerned?
Well, when we talk about the world or world community, Western countries very conveniently exclude Russia and China and Iran from that. So when they talk about the international community, they mean European Union and America itself.
But what about, what do you see? How do you see that block, so to speak?
This, if any country recognizes, they will be, I think the first 5 countries would be Russia, China, Pakistan and Iran and maybe Qatar. But Qatar will do only after consent from America, because there are huge American bases and American influence in Qatar. So they may recognize. But even if these 5 countries recognize, we have discussed this earlier, even if these 5 countries recognize, Western countries will be at the most giving humanitarian aid through UN probably. But we need to keep in mind that humanitarian aid is bare minimum, which reaches to people just to avoid starvation. But what Afghanistan needs after 40 years of war, civil war, Afghanistan needs some development. Now, for the past 20 years, they did try to do some development work, some bridges, hospitals, universities, they were constructed. Now, this development work needs to move forward. And for that, they need money. And for that, if money doesn't come, then in Afghanistan, people will be in a survival mode. So, in that, the future is not, unless these rare earth that the ambassador talked about, some new discoveries, and they are able to extract it. But for that, you need, number 1, peace. Number 2, you need technical expertise, which China may give. But even if China gives, again, it reminds me of Recordec and SENDAC. I remember, and you also remember probably, when these projects started, there was a euphoria that thanks to SENDAC and thanks to Recordec, now we will be prosperous country in the world. Now what happens after 25 years? The technology is there, the Chinese are there, but the benefits are not reaching the people. So it takes a lot of efforts, money, peace, and inclusion of local people in that. If that doesn't happen, I don't think that that rare earth material, whatever is there, that is going to make much of a difference anytime soon. At least
In
for
the
the
current
next 5 years.
scenario, of course, they need all the assistance that they can to exploit your resources, their own resources if they have any, which of course there's a lot of talk about. Right, but Rani Sahab, in terms of as far as the next couple of weeks is concerned, the next couple of months is concerned, what do you see the overall scenario as far as Afghanistan is concerned? In terms of course, the international community, we've talked about it, whether they recognize them, or they don't recognize them, under whatever guise, whatever name, they will be, giving assistance to, whether they say they want to give it to the people without the Taliban. That, of course, doesn't seem a possibility at this time.
I think we may hazard our guesses anywhere, but let me clarify. Chinese were not involved in day-to-day. They were involved in copper project, Sandak copper project. And Sandak copper project, if we could not negotiate efficiently, then that is not the fault of the Chinese. But even then, I think Sandak has contributed a lot to our economy. The project is a different game, and Chinese were not involved at all. Secondly, when you talk about Afghanistan and about its assistance, immediate neighbors are likely to come up first, and that would also entail criticism of Taliban regime. But once the cabinet is in place, and then I think there will be a regional approach to recognize Afghanistan. That would be then looked at, and that would be a very important message to the rest of the international communities, especially the Americans and the European Union, that they have to, because we cannot leave Afghanistan a field open for different other interest groups to play with and take the benefit of. And let me reiterate that the mineral wealth in Afghanistan is now a new paradigm shift in Afghanistan. And somehow, unfortunately, during the past 20 years, the American the political stability in the country, the dispensation they had carried through could not deliver, and especially in this economic realm, and that is how it had faced the defeat. Now here it is very important that we have to look at it very carefully, and secondly we have to play our cards very carefully, and we should also avoid euphoric statements and not to become the spokespersons of Taliban. Rather, we should involve ourselves in real reconstruction activity which can help Afghanistan to reconstruct. Thank you.
Right. Imran Sahab, do you agree? You think that, of course, we need to have that kind of engagement that the Rani Sahab is talking about with the Taliban. Of course, we're doing what we can. We've seen, from the very beginning, we've said we want inclusive government. We just don't want, Afghani soil to be used against Pakistan.
Of course, Pakistan as a country must engage with the Taliban, not only for its own selfish interests, even if its own selfish interests. Just as Ambassador Saab mentioned, the resources under the earth, that are there that needs to be exploited.
Right.
Taliban do not have the expertise to exploit their own resources. They cannot even get their own airport up and running. I was reading today that Qatar had to send their people to help them get the airport started and have the planes up in the air, whatever is happening. So Pakistan can engage with Taliban in a lot of different things to help them run their country, jumpstart, kickstart the country, because eventually, as we always say, a peaceful Afghanistan will be good for Pakistan.
And of course, for the region as a whole.
Absolutely.
Right. Dr. Nasir, your comments.
Yes, I think I foresee both positives and some apprehensions also. The positive is that definitely peace will be there. I foresee that the Taliban will remain there for a good time. Again, I will give example of Iran when Imam Khomeini took over, people said that it is hardly a matter of just a couple of years. They won't survive. This theocracy won't survive. But I can foresee that if Taliban are under control of 100% Afghanistan, they may continue for another 40, 50 years. There is a possibility. This is, and then one positive aspect of that is that there will be peace. Less incursion or almost no incursion into Pakistan from Indian side. That is positive side. The negative side I have already mentioned that.
How well do you think it is a possibility as far as for the Taliban is concerned that they can control the ISIS or any of these Daesh, all these groups, these extremist groups?
I don't see ISIS or Daesh as major threat at the moment. Maybe in future, but at the moment I don't see that they will be able to pose a major threat to Taliban or to Pakistan. Why? Because had they been that strong, there may be a couple of hundred militants, fighters, but I don't think that if Taliban and Pakistan combine, if they tackle them properly.
What about the attack on the U.S. forces? The way the attack in the airport we've seen, at the airport that we've seen.
American forces are no more there, so they might be able to incite some trouble here or there, maybe some blasts here and there, but not at the scale.
You don't think that their strength was perhaps miscalculated?
My hunch is that they are not that strong. My hunch is that they are not that strong. Taliban are much stronger. Pakistan Army and Pakistani Defense Forces, if they combine, and they can crush this easily. So again, there might be some trouble. There might be some bomb blast or some things like that. But I don't see a major upheaval incited by
any of these
Daesh or ISI. What I foresee, maybe as I said, maybe some other extremist group within Pakistan which want to establish a theocratic government, they will be emboldened, but no major trouble I foresee, at least in near future.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Imran Jan Saab, thank you for joining us. Dr. Nazir Mahmood, thank you for being with us. Asif Durrani Saab, thank you for your time. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, of course, the world is continuing to watch what happens in the near future, and we will know more in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months. But of course, the role of the world cannot, it's not sufficient for the world to sanction it, to talk about the Taliban, to talk about their activities within Afghanistan. It is a time where countries all over the world also need to step up for the people of this war-torn, unfortunately, war-ravaged region. And for that, we hope that the world will unite in doing all it can, like Pakistan is doing, to ensure that the Taliban, that the people governed by now who are now going to be governed by the Taliban get all the help, get all the humanitarian assistance that they will definitely need in the foreseeable future. Thank you so much for being with us today on Perspective.